I always thought that stories like mine were pure fiction, until I experienced it myself. I used to think that such things only happened in movies or books, but fate had other plans for me. I married my classmate from high school, after which I crossed paths with my future mother-in-law for almost 5 years. My wife's mom, Alice, raised her alone after some problems with her father. Even after the wedding, Alice and her mom, Margaret, had little contact. Their relationship was always distant, and I think both of them were too proud to make any effort to change that. There always seemed to be an invisible wall between them that neither of them wanted to break down. I could sense the underlying tension, but I preferred not to interfere. It wasn't my place to interfere, and I knew it was best to stay out of their unresolved problems. As much as I loved Alice, I knew there were some things I couldn't fix, and this was one of them. Back in high school, I remembered how strict Margaret was with her daughter. She always made sure that Alice was disciplined, and it was clear that Margaret had high expectations for her. There was no room for error in Margaret's world. Time passed, but she remained the same, unyielding and demanding. She held herself with an authority that was almost impossible to question. Margaret had a look in her eyes that could make anyone feel small, as if she saw through your every flaw. We rarely spoke to each other, which was understandable given her personality. By nature, I am a calm and obedient person. It was always easier for me to agree and do something than to get into arguments or confrontations. I never wanted to create unnecessary tension. My priority was Alice, and I just wanted to keep the peace. For 4 years, Alice and I lived together, never having saved enough money for our own place. We rented an apartment from someone we knew at a reasonable price, and it suited us just fine. We were comfortable and life was relatively simple. We didn't need much, we had each other, and that was enough. However, over time, these acquaintances decided to move to another country and sell all their possessions. Because of this, Alice and I decided to move in with her mother for the first time. I knew it wasn't the best idea, but I was spurred on by the desire to find a new place to live and get back to my own space as soon as possible. I didn't want to interfere in Margaret's life any more than necessary, and I knew Alice felt the same way. My mother-in-law treated me well, which put me somewhat at ease, although I could feel the tension in the air. Margaret was a lawyer by profession. Her ability to stand up for herself and get her own way allowed her to achieve impressive results. She was an incredibly strong-willed woman, but even at her age she remained fit and elegant. She held herself with a confidence that was almost intimidating. There was something about her presence that made it impossible to relax around her. Despite this, she never tried to find a man, claiming she didn't want to pursue it. To her, men were disposable. A rather harsh opinion, but there seemed to be few who could live up to her high standards. She was fierce and independent, and I think this put off anyone who might be interested in her. She had a way of shutting people out, erecting barriers that were almost impossible to break through. It was like she'd built herself a fortress, and she wouldn't let anyone inside. Maybe it was for the best, at least in Alice's opinion. Though I always thought that maybe the lack of a male comforting presence made her as tough as she was, afraid to show vulnerability or gentleness. I've often wondered what Margaret was like when she was young, before life made her so withdrawn. Was she always this way, or did something happen that caused her to put up these walls? I imagined a young Margaret, full of hopes and dreams, who had been let down by life in some way. I couldn't help but feel sympathy for her. One morning I woke up early. Alice had already left for work, and I had an unexpected day off. I was alone in the apartment, and I didn't know what to do with myself. Margaret's apartment was large, with 3 bedrooms and a spacious hall, beautifully furnished and spotlessly clean. It was obvious that Margaret took pride in her home, and she had everything in its place. She was meticulous, and the apartment had an almost clinical atmosphere. Still half asleep, I walked past the hallway, and out of the corner of my eye I spotted Margaret in the mirror. Apparently she had just woken up, too. She was dressed in a sheer nightgown, wearing headphones, oblivious to my presence. It was an unexpected sight, and it couldn't help but attract me. I wanted to leave, but curiosity took over. I froze for a moment, just watching. In that moment she looked different, almost vulnerable. It was as if I saw a side of her I didn't even know existed, a softer, more human side. For a moment she saw me in the mirror, and I felt a rush of embarrassment. Our eyes met in the reflection, and I felt as if I had been caught doing something wrong, like a schoolboy caught up in mischief. I couldn't look away. There was something in the way she looked at me, something in her eyes that I couldn't understand. Margaret seemed to have an idea, a brilliant one, she thought. There was a gleam in her eyes, and I couldn't understand what she was thinking. I could feel my heart pounding, the tension building between us. I knew that what was about to happen would change everything. And here I was, lying on the couch with my mother-in-law. She was simply captivating, more alluring than anything I could have ever imagined. She seemed to be in complete control, and I felt powerless before her charms. A storm of emotions swept through me as she seemed to fulfill all of my fantasies that I had nurtured for years, fantasies that I had never imagined coming true. She looked at me and simply said, "Well, go ahead," with a knowing smile that sent shivers down my spine. I did as she said, without hesitation or hesitation. There was a certainty in her voice, an authority that made it impossible for me to refuse. She seemed to know exactly what she wanted, and I was caught in her web. And now I'm lying in the other room, staring at the ceiling, wondering what's going to happen next. My mind is racing, filled with conflicting emotions, excitement, guilt, confusion. I have no idea where this path will lead or how it will affect everything, but there is no turning back now. I'm caught in a situation that feels like I've stepped off the pages of a story I once thought was pure fiction, and I can't help but wonder what tomorrow will bring. Will things ever be the same again? Will I be able to look into Alice's eyes without feeling the weight of what happened? The questions keep piling up and I have no answers. The uncertainty of it all is both frightening and exhilarating. Lying here, I can hear Margaret moving around in the other room. There is a strange sense of calm in the air, as if what has happened is the most natural thing in the world. I can't help but think about the way she looked at me, how she seemed to know exactly what she wanted and how to get it. It was as if she had it all planned out and I was just a piece in her game. I feel admiration and fear towards her, admiration for her confidence and fear of the power she seemed to have over me. I wonder if she is thinking about what happened, or if it was just another moment for her that doesn't carry the same weight for me. I can't shake the feeling that this is just the beginning of something bigger, something that will change everything. The more I think about it, the more I realize that I'm drawn to her in ways I can't explain. There's something about her strength, her independence, that fascinates me. She's unlike anyone I've ever met, and I want to know more about her, to understand what makes her who she is. But at the same time, I realize that this attraction is dangerous. It's a path that could lead to the destruction of everything I hold dear. And yet I can't bring myself to regret what happened. It was the right thing to do at the time, and I can't deny that. The future is uncertain, and I have no idea what will happen next. All I know is that I'm in too deep to turn back, and whatever happens next, I'm going to have to face it head on. Margaret enters the room, her footsteps echoing in the silence, and she casts me a look that is both commanding and understanding. There is a strange connection between us, something unspoken but undeniable. She sits down next to me, and her presence is both comforting and frightening. For a while she says nothing, just stares at me, and I can feel the intensity of her gaze. Finally she breaks the silence. "You know this changes everything, don't you?" she says, her voice calm but firm. I nod, not believing I can speak. I know she's right. Nothing will ever be the same again, and that thought both scares and pleases me at the same time. She reaches out and touches my arm, her fingers lightly touching my skin, and I feel electricity build between us. "I don't know where this is going," she continues, her eyes searching mine, "but I think we both know there's no turning back." I swallow hard, realizing the gravity of her words. She's right, there's no turning back. Whatever happens, we're going to have to face it together, for better or worse. The future is a blank slate, and the possibilities are endless. Yes, there is fear, but there is also hope. Hope that maybe something good will come out of this. And when I look into Margaret's eyes, I see that same hope reflected in me. We're on a dangerous path, but I'm willing to take it no matter what it takes.